What does a true psychopath look like? Television provides us with the vicarious experience of viewing the world through different characters and delving into their psyche. Today we are delving into the twisted psyche of Gus Fring and why the seemingly calm and professional gentleman is actually the most sadistic, psychopathic villain in television history. Every villain in history had a past trauma or pain that fills the character with hate and, coupled with their vindictive nature, compels them to commit the heinous acts they do. Gus is no different, and his relationship with Max coming to an end thanks to Hector Salamanca is what prevents Gus from allowing anyone to ever get close to him again. Not because he was incapable of forming emotional attachments, but because he saw no advantage to them. Even though this sounds sad, it is actually more malevolent than it seems, because it shows that in Gus's head, the pleasure of torturing Hector and killing the cartel is a greater pleasure than he'll ever receive from having people he truly cares about. To him the sacrifice is non-negotiable because it would provide nothing but dilute his efficiency and create weak links, something that Fring excels at eliminating. The reason attachment provides a weak link is because it entails emotions, and Gus doesn't operate on emotion. Every decision he makes is purely logical, and he doesn't incorporate emotion into his decisions. He was what a company or big cooperation would look like if it were a person. He is extremely professional and seemingly nice on the outside, but in reality is apathetic and doesn't actually care about anything other than his agenda, which in Gus's case is avenging Max, who fans theorize was his lover. Given that it was heavily hinted many times throughout the series that Gus is gay, from the framed photograph of him and Max, to him flirting with the wine connoisseur, to the beautiful village built dedicated to Max in the Better Call Saul episode Dedicado a Max, to how upset he got about Max's death and how he dedicated the next 20 years of his life building his drug empire so he can seek revenge on the cartel and the man he hates more than anything, Hector Salamanca. Gus Fring's detest for the old man was apparent in Breaking Bad, but it couldn't have been more potent than in Better Call Saul. He stops Mike from shooting Hector with his sniper, and he may have had his logical reasons, but he also stated,
"A bullet to the head would have been far too humane."
Gus didn't just save Hector's life once, however. He saved it again at the end of that season when Hector has his heart attack and almost out of instinct he runs forward to administer CPR and keep the man he hates the most alive so he can be alive for the torture that Fring has planned for him. Luckily for Gus, Hector survived the heart attack, so Gus got him the best doctor and the best medical care to get Hector to wake, but it wasn't apparent whether he is conscious, and of course Gus needs Hector conscious, so when the doctor said that speaking to Hector will increase the chances of him regaining consciousness, Gus tells the chilling story of the sadistic pleasure he got from torturing a coati as a 7-year-old child. Gus grew up in Chile in poverty, and he was always hungry, so when he watered the tree in his garden and it grew to bear fruit that was tasty and nutritious, he was happier than ever. He felt proud of his work and the food served to feed his family, and he also sold it in the village for extra money. One day the tree was half destroyed and fruits were scattered everywhere. He thought it was a coati, so he set a snare, and when the animal set it off it thrashed so hard it broke its leg and ran under Gus's house. He waited for hours for the animal to show, and when it did, he caught it. We hear him say how the merciful thing would have been to kill it. After that we don't know what he did. All we see is Gus smile and say,
"It lived for quite some time,"
suggesting he tortured the animal as he sounded almost impressed with how much it survived. This scene reveals a new perspective on Gus, as before you could always blame Max's death for why he is so evil, but it shows how vindictive Gus is and how he's been like that since he was born. He lives to seek revenge on those who hurt him.
Why me?
Because I believe that you understand.
Understand what?
Revenge.
A 7-year-old child torturing an innocent animal because it upset him is truly a disturbing thought, and anyone would say that child will grow up to be a disturbed individual, which is exactly what happened. He likes to watch suffering of people who hurt him because he understands killing, in a way, is a merciful act, a fact he's known since he was a child, and is more favorable than being kept alive for torture, which is a far worse punishment. After Hector's heart attack, all Gus needed was Hector to be awake and conscious, and the doctors were testing on how present he was. When he woke, it wasn't apparent whether Hector was still the same person or if his personality had changed. The doctor showed Gus the video of Hector knocking over the cup of water so he could look at the nurse's ass. Gus began to smile as he now knew that Hector was conscious and still there, and despite the doctor's confidence in getting him to talk again, Gus told the doctor not to continue treatment. He didn't need Hector to talk. In fact, it was better for Gus if Hector couldn't talk. He just needed Hector to be conscious. This is why Gus reacted so quickly when he saw Hector collapse. He didn't want him dead, he wanted him alive and suffering. Even Lalo commended Gus on how quickly he acted when Hector had his heart attack, and amongst the whole commotion, Gus managed to come to the realization that it was Nacho who was responsible for it. He realized that Nacho swapped the medication after he got Victor to follow him, and Victor saw Nacho throwing the pills into a river. He saw an opportunity to gain another asset and suffocated his partner with a bag and blackmailed Nacho into working for him by threatening to tell the Salamanca family what he did.
Look at me. From now on, you are mine.
To further threaten Nacho, he threatened to kill his dad if he stepped out of line or tried to quit his role as a double agent. When Mike asks Gus to let Nacho go, Gus simply states that he sees no reason to give up an asset.
Nacho Varga. He wants out. He's done everything we asked. He held up his end. I think it's time we cut him loose.
I see no reason to give up an asset.
Television often provide a humane character, like Mike, next to a monster like Gus, because, as a good show like Breaking Bad manipulates our morality throughout the viewing experience, it is easy to be ignorant to the evil in front of our eyes. In Walter's case it is Jesse, and in Gus's case it is Mike, who asks Fring to lift the gun off Nacho's father's head.
You have a gun to his father's head. That doesn't sit with me.
But when asked, Fring's response was,
A dog who bites every owner he's had can only be disciplined with a firm hand or put down.
This shows how he literally sees himself as Nacho's owner, and with this mindset, it is easy to see how he is able to treat Nacho like a piece of dirt. Nacho wasn't an angel, but he kept his humanity throughout the show, and most people would agree that he didn't deserve the punishment he got. Nacho was effectively given a death sentence when Gus sent the hitman to Lalo's house. The entire cartel knew he was a rat and chased him down until he was finally put down. Gus put Nacho on a ride that he didn't let him get off of, as he signed the death warrant of a man who on the outside might have been a criminal, but on the inside was actually a kind and moral man. The difference between human and monster is that humans show remorse.
Damn, man, look at that, look!
The best character at detecting human and monster was Mike, who detested the likes of Walt and Todd because he knew they were purely evil, but sympathized with Jesse and Nacho. Every time Mike kills someone he shows remorse, and even when he does it's always as a last resort. Even Walt showed remorse when he let Jane die in Season 2 and when he killed Crazy 8, but not once did we see such a thing with Gus. He had children working for him, and when they died, he didn't care. He may have even been the one who ordered the death. When he ordered the hit on Lalo's family, who were innocent people, were all shot, and Gus didn't care. He threatened Walt with the potential death of his wife, son, and infant daughter. He told the Salamanca twins to kill Hank after they pestered him repeatedly, asking for permission to kill Walter as revenge for betraying Tuco and being responsible for his death. Instead, he allowed them to go for Hank, and even though he sent him a warning call 1 minute before the attack, it wasn't because he cared about him, it was because he wanted a shootout between Hank and the cousins. Hank didn't even intend to find Tuco. He was looking for Jesse, as he thought it may lead to him finding Walt, who was missing at the time because he was kidnapped by Tuco. When Hank accidentally found Tuco, he was shot first. He didn't set out to kill him, but by complete chance he did, which is why the Salamanca twins settled for him. But Hank was completely innocent here, and the only responsibility on him is taking the dangerous job as a DEA agent. Gus had no problem letting an innocent man reach the cusp of death in a shootout, because Gus sees any human as nothing other than pawns on the chessboard in the game he's playing against his adversaries. Mike is a useful asset, which is why he never had to fear for his life. He provided skills. competence and loyalty that Gus knew would be next to impossible to replace. However, someone like Werner, who becomes a liability, is someone who Gus has no problem eliminating for the most risk-free way to clean up the mess that was made. He dearly missed his wife and tried to plan a vacation with her despite being given explicit orders to stay. It was made clear to all the Germans that abandoning the work site was not allowed and that the work was top secret. Werner didn't listen and escaped by pointing a laser at the cameras. After he was found, we were forced to watch what was to become one of the saddest scenes in the whole series. Mike called Gus and asked him over the phone to spare Werner's life and let it be a mistake. It was pretty clear that Werner wouldn't step out of line again and knew he made a mistake, but Gus had made up his mind before the discussion even began.
Let it be a mistake.
This discussion serves no purpose.
Killing Werner really was a pointless exercise as it served as nothing but a punishment. Alive or not, his irresponsible actions couldn't have been undone, but Gus has a zero-tolerance rule on people he works with. As mentioned before, Gus doesn't work with emotion and unprofessionalism and of course, not being able to fire him, he orders him to be killed. It also served as a warning to the other Germans that the rules are to be adhered to, no matter what. Another employee Gus killed because they didn't adhere to the rules was Victor, whose death proved to be one of the most difficult to figure out in Breaking Bad. It is terrifying for us viewers to watch how Gus walked into the room and got changed very calmly, then ruthlessly stab his own employee to death and exit just as calmly.
Well, get back to work.
Gus feels no sense of loyalty to the man who was feverishly loyal to him. Instead, he is a pawn on the chessboard who became a loose end and had to be sacrificed. Even Walter, who is one of the most evil people in the show, has an emotional attachment to his partner who's been loyal to him, and although he doesn't exactly care about how Jesse feels, he still viewed him as more than an asset and saved him from a life of slavery, taking a bullet for him, quite literally. But Gus had no problem inflicting pain on Victor to instill fear into Walter and Jesse, and even Mike. On the outside, Gus is a very calm and professional man, but on the inside is a ruthless animal filled with nothing but hate and anger. However, we didn't know this at this part of the show because we had only seen Gus being very courteous and lenient, especially as he is a drug kingpin. This violent side of Gus only comes out a few times, which is what makes it all the more scary. He may have no problem slitting someone's throat with a box cutter, or suffocating them with a plastic bag, but that doesn't mean he'll do it for no reason. Most villains instill fear within the viewer by being capricious and angry, like Tuco, who is beating someone to death in every scene to show that he is violent. However, the flip side is equally as terrifying because Gus doesn't need to be violent, or even talk, to scare you. The simple threat of violence is enough to strike fear into anyone. Gus's understanding of human psychology, which he uses to his advantage to manipulate his enemies and even employees, shows how smart he is and how he has no problem manipulating people to his advantage. Whether he's tricking the whole cartel into thinking he's loyal or tricking the whole DEA and his whole community into thinking he's some kind of saint, Gus never fails to use human psychology to his advantage to morph people's perception of his image. This is a typical trait in psychopaths, living double lives. On the surface, they seem like upstanding members of society who do good deeds, but really these deeds are just to make it seem like they care, not because they actually care. No matter who he is communicating with, criminal or not, Gus is always smiling. However, this is just to keep up the facade of respect. Every time he isn't talking to someone, Gus has a very serious and cold expression on his face. It isn't that he doesn't understand human emotion, he just doesn't feel it, but he pretends to feel it to make him look like more than an apathetic monster. But if Gus were to look how he is truly feeling all the time, he would have the same bitter look on his face, constantly. This is what psychopaths do. They understand human emotions as well as everyone else, and then just pretend to feel them to suit whatever social scenario they find themselves in, and Gus is no exception. The best villains are scary, smart, and capable of heinous acts of violence at the drop of a hat. They have a complex morality, and although it may be very clear, they are evil. They are not evil without reason, and almost everyone could find a reason to be evil, But actually waking up and doing it is what separates psychopaths like Gus from the rest of the population. Gus ticks every box for a pure psychopath. He doesn't need to talk or raise his voice to make you feel scared and can manipulate you into thinking he's not such a bad guy when in reality he's plotting to poison you or have you shot. He is pure genius and throughout the show managed to stay 10 steps ahead of everyone, which is why in the next video I'm covering why Gus is the smartest character in all of Breaking Bad.